to an extra special edition of the Wealthy Boss Show. I am here with you live, and tonight is extra special, as I mentioned, because I am doing my first ever live interview. I have a very special guest planned for tonight. We are going to be talking, before I introduce you, I want to let you know we're going to be talking tonight about reducing mental overwhelm in your business through social media systems and a ton of other cool stuff. So if you have your own tribe or community that could probably do it a little bit less crazy in their lives, then I invite you to share this with them. And let's go ahead. I would love to introduce our host, Taylor Bradford. Taylor and I have known each other for quite a little while now. I'm part of her community that she's about to tell you all about. And she's just such a wealth of information. So Taylor Bradford, she's the host and creator of the Boss Girl Creative Podcast and Community. In 2011, she started a blogging tips and tricks series entitled Blogging Edumacation, I hope I said that right, on her lifestyle blog, which is how I found out about her. And her lifestyle blog is Pink Heels, Pink Truck. After writing over 40 lessons, she decided to take her lessons and advice and turn them into a podcast, which I'm pretty grateful for personally. Her podcast teaches the what's, whys, and how's of blogging, business, and being a creative entrepreneur. She has a passion for teaching and helping other creative entrepreneurs. She has a knack for business and a lifelong dream of sharing it with her fellow boss girls. So Taylor, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for that intro.
Absolutely. So I have so many questions I want to ask you today. And the first one, I was going to ask you to share a little bit about your business, but I realize that's not even the right term to use. So business singular is not the correct term. So Taylor, how many businesses do you have?
I currently have 3 that I actively am managing right now. I had 4, but I guess you could count 5 if you include my rental property, because that's kind of a business, although that's more mailbox money. But yeah, so I've got 5, although we just dwindled 1 down, so maybe it's now down to 4.
So tell me a little bit about each, or whichever ones you want to focus on. Tell us a little bit more about what those all are.
So I have a vintage rental business that is actually also a styling company. And that business is over 2.5 years old and I do that here in the DFW Metroplex. So I'm from Texas. And I also have a blog, which is Pink Heels, Pink Truck. And then the podcast, which is Boss Girl Creative. And rental property, and my husband and I just had a car lot where we sold cars, but we just rented that out. So now that's lumped into the rental property category. And then I also have a day job, which I manage to squeeze in.
And you're a personal fitness trainer, right? You have a background in health and fitness as well?
I do. Yeah, I have a degree in kinesiology and a business minor. I'm still a certified personal trainer, although I haven't worn that hat in quite a while, but I do still keep my certifications up to date with all the continuing education because they were really hard to get, and I don't want to ever have to do that again. So I've been out of school for quite a long time, and to have to sit down and wrap my brain back around A&P and lots of other crazy things, it's just easier to maintain through continuing to learn the latest in the trends of staying healthy and staying fit. And so I definitely have a background in that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I know I'm just in the middle of doing re-upping on all my CECs as well. So never any battle, but that's not a bad thing. Okay, so I want to talk to you tonight about several things, but I love, because social media is such a thing that you rock at, you're just the queen of social media. And I teach some things related to self-care. So at first, self-care and social media might seem to be in completely different worlds. I don't see that. So I see that self-care, and everyone has a different definition of self-care, but to me, yes, sometimes self-care means slowing down, sometimes it's doing less. But I also believe that a stitch in time saves 9. Sometimes I think self-care actually comes down to just being more strategic and more effort into creating systems and processes that then free us up to have more energy and less stress and less, less of the merry-go-round or rat race or whatever metaphor you want to go with. So with that being said, how important to you, and you just said you manage like 4 or 5, you can't even count how many businesses you manage on top of a day job and on top of taking care of yourself. So how important is organization to you in your, both in terms of your business outcomes as well as your personal mental stress management?
It is so important. I could not do what I do without organization. And I am a spreadsheet queen, and I have processes for everything I do. And it's a little overwhelming when I onboard an intern or onboard an assistant, because I have these things that I want done a specific way because I've created the system and it works. And so it is so important for me. I use a ton of schedulers to keep myself active on social media, but I also show up to the platforms where my audience is hanging out and I'm live there. So I make it a very important part of my life to stay organized so that I can keep doing all these side hustles, because the end goal is to not have a day job and to make the 3 businesses that I truly have such passion about my full-time, this is what I'm living for every single day.
Yeah. And I think that's why so many people don't start entrepreneurial endeavors, is when it sounds glamorous, but when you're into the nitty gritty, and most people, unless you happen to have, a big inheritance to live off of, or you're one of the million who makes it big overnight, most of us take a long time to get there, and it takes work, it takes organization, and it's organization that no one else is holding you accountable to except yourself. So I think that's what it takes, and I also think that's why some people kind of shy away from it for even starting entrepreneurial endeavors in the first place.
Right.
Do you think that being organized comes naturally for most entrepreneurs? And I guess as a follow-up question to that, if you don't think it's like a natural skill, do you think it's something that can be learned?
I actually don't think it's a natural skill. I think if you have a very strong creative brain, you are scattered. And I have a very strong creative brain, and it takes me like literally putting it into my calendar to sit down and remember I have to make sure my Tailwind account is still full, and I need to make sure my Meet Edgar is sending out tweets right, and like I'm not tweeting out Christmas stuff right now. Like, it takes some practice and it takes some dedication to make those habits, because it doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. Like, I have to created the system on purpose so that I would sit down and do it. Because it's not like, I like to be organized. I'm very type A in the sense that I am a control freak and that kind of thing. But like, I stay off in la la land a lot of times. And I just actually, when I was preparing to put my laptop in this spot, I found my sheet on what tweets I haven't written for my podcast in probably 6 weeks. So like, that kind of thing is like, why did that sheet get over here? Why is it not where you normally keep it? So I don't think that comes naturally to a lot of creatives. I think it comes naturally to a lot of analytical brains, but I don't think it comes naturally to the creatives who are just wanting to actually just keep doing what they're doing and what they're good at.
I think that's really important. And I totally 100% agree that it can be a learned skill. I've seen that be something that's been developed in me. I still have a long way to go, but I never really considered myself to be a super organized person in the past. That was not something that I was known for. But once I became an entrepreneur and I had this huge, big idea that I needed to steer and shape and shift into actually getting stuff done and putting a product out there and then making it accessible to people and getting an audience, then and doing this while working full time, it became really important to me to learn those steps. So I've made a lot of progress through Chalene Johnson. I talk a lot about her Smart Success Academy, and just other listening to people like you that have these great systems in place. So I totally believe that it's a skill set that can be developed and should be developed. And it's been fun. Like, even in my day jobs now, people tell me like, "Oh, you're so organized. Like, you're the organized one." And I didn't used to be. And so I think that is kind of encouraging for those of us who maybe think that we're not super organized, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
I also think that's great why we have people like you who can come on the show and share your wisdom and your processes, so that they don't have to completely create those processes from scratch, because that's where your zone of genius really is. Can you share a couple? I know you have so many. Can you share like 3 or 4 of your favorite tools and how you use them to help stay organized in social media and your content planning?
Yes. So Google Sheets, just the whole Google suite of products, but mainly Google Sheets is where my spreadsheet sheets live, because I can access them wherever I have access to the internet, and I don't have to worry about always having my laptop and knowing that I've already done X, Y, and Z for such and such blog post or such and such podcast episode. So Google Sheets is one of my go-to tools. I use Meet Edgar, which is my Twitter scheduler. And the reason I invest in that, because it's not cheap, the reason I invest in Meet Edgar is to allow a continuous cycle. So I can use Buffer, and Buffer app has several different, you can have a free Buffer app, or you can have the paid version of Buffer, and you can load tweets in and it'll send them out on a schedule, but it doesn't cycle them back through. And so with Meet Edgar, that's the benefit, is once you load it in, it stays in there and keeps rolling on the schedule that you build until you pull it back out. And so that is beneficial to me as a blogger, because it allows me and my content to constantly be going out, and over whatever time frame that I have it plugging away at. The other tool that I use a lot is Tailwind. I use Tailwind to schedule my Pinterest, and it is a really great tool in order to continue to share other people's content, which is a very important thing in being any person on social media. It shouldn't be about just you. You will attract more people when you are sharing other people's content that your audience finds valuable and aligns with your own brand and what you're already creating and putting out there. So that's important, and that allows me to push other people's content out, as well as like find new content that I'm interested in that fits with my brand and that sort of thing. So those are my 3 that I absolutely cannot live without.
You're probably not going to have an answer for this, but then again, you may, because you're so super organized. Can you walk me through like what a typical day is for you, kind of your routine, and how you kind of interweave the personal and the business together? Do you have pretty standard ways that you say like set up your day or end, or things that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah. So I am addicted to my phone. And as soon as I wake up, the very first thing I check is my email. And then I start on Facebook and check all my notifications there to see if anybody asked me any questions while I was asleep. And I start responding, and I go ahead and then work on what Instagram posts I'm going to put out on both of my Instagram channels. So I run one for my vintage business, and then I run one for my blog/podcast. And so I create the copy for that, and I go ahead and push those out in the morning. And then I don't have to worry about those again, except for coming back on around lunchtime to interact with people on Instagram, interact with people through their stories. Instagram sends me some business, and I want to make sure that those relationships that I've already formed there, or that I'm looking to form new ones, that I'm actually active and interacting. So I don't have any kind of third-party tool that's interacting on my behalf for Instagram. Instagram doesn't like that. There are some that exist. I know a couple just got shut down and some people lost their accounts. So you have to be careful, because Instagram's API and their terms of service are pretty clear about using third party. They want you to be organic in their platform. So after that, it's time to get ready, and I drive an hour to work, and that's when I listen to podcasts. So I listen to podcasts on my way to work, and once I'm at work, I usually have all of my email tabs open, because I have 3 that I'm checking all day long, and that's probably really bad for any kind of productivity. but it's my way to stay on top of what's happening. I'm very lucky in the sense that I'm a contractor. And so if I, for example, have a bride that sends over a request for rentals at 10 in the morning, I can actually take care of it at that moment. If I know I have a blog post that has a deadline of noon and I didn't get it finished the night before, then I can sit there and get it done. So I do have some flexibility in my day job. They may not like me doing that, but I am a contractor, so I do have some of that flexibility. So, and I keep a little Facebook third-party app that just connects to my Messenger on in like just sitting in the toolbar area of my computer, because I get messages sent to me all day long. And so I don't want to have Facebook just sitting up on my computer because people walk around me and they don't want to, I just don't want to show that I'm on Facebook. And so I just leave that down there so I can stay, again, I feel like I have to stay attached, and I should probably cut the umbilical cord, but this is just how it works for me. And so, but I'm at work until 5 o'clock. So I get there about 9 and I'm there until 5. And it's kind of an ebb and flow of what I feel is necessary to be doing while trying to also produce what I'm being paid for my day job. And then I have another hour drive back home, more podcast listening. And once I'm home, though, that's the balance between my husband and house stuff. And then, oh my gosh, I have to record a podcast episode, or I have to write a blog post, or I have to shoot photos for a cocktail or something. And so I never stop, ever. Like, this past weekend was the first weekend in a really long time that I did absolutely nothing except read 3 books. And that's what I did.
I love it. Last week, I actually took 3 whole days off too. I hadn't had a day off even in my day job for 30 days. And then if you count like the last time I'd had a day off, like without working on Wealthy Boss, I don't even know. But it was so incredible. Like, I took 3 days to not be productive. And I think that is so critical.
It is.
Talk a lot about at Wealthy Boss, but it's something, I think that's the hardest piece of self-care for most of us, or at least for me. I know, self-care is broad, but for myself, like, yeah, I'm good with eating healthy. I'm good with exercising. I'm good with, shutting technology down an hour before bed, but actually just taking time to just relax. That's definitely harder. And so that's why I think it's important as entrepreneurs that we have these conversations, even if it's just finding these little bitty pockets where we're doing, something for our mental health. So
yes.
What do you find then, even though it might be a work in progress, what is your kind of go-to method for your mental health and stress management, and just trying to free yourself
reading
and
Yeah, reading is one, but the other one is getting on a bike at the gym and just going and reading at the same time, because that takes my brain into another world, and I'm not focused on the problems that I have, the stresses that I have. I'm basically in my own world. That is why I appreciate when I know, like, should I have taken the 3 days off this weekend? Probably not. But I haven't done that in months. Yep. And I just indulged in myself. I knew I hadn't been indulging in just me time. And so I just took it. Whether or not I actually needed to is a different story. But reading and like escaping to get a workout and just like sweating it out, like that makes me feel like I've reconnected to myself, and I can be back to, okay, I'm back on my game now.
Awesome. And how do you find, like, when you do take that time, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, or both, like when you're taking care of your body and your brain, what do you find that does for your business?
It just turns my creativity back on, because I can wear myself out where I am uninspired. I am lacking in ideas. I'm waiting to the last minute to figure out what I'm going to podcast about that week. And I'm a natural procrastinator anyway, which I deal with every single day. And I work better under pressure. So I don't really see it being all that negative, but I bring it on myself. And it just allows me to step away from everything I'm doing and like recenter. So even if it's just a fluffy book that I'm reading, it allows my brain to just go out there, and I can be reading and sort of taking whatever it is I'm reading, but my brain is still working through ideas in that subconscious layer. And it allows me to come back and be like, now I know what I need to podcast about, or now I know I need to do whatever. And so then I can have a brainstorm session for 30 minutes and basically build out an editorial calendar for the next month and a half, or whatever it is I need to do.
I love that. And I actually just had a conversation with another group of entrepreneurs about this earlier, that my best moments, as much as we pride ourselves on being hustlers and getting those spreadsheets together, and those are an important part of growing a business, but I fully admit, like my only eureka moments, I don't have them as much as I'd like, but my only eureka moments in my business, whether it was solving a problem, trying to decide on a new direction to go on in my business, or just, figuring out maybe what my best social media strategy is to try to condense and repurpose content. The only time I've had those moments have not been when I've been sitting in front of the computer. It's been when I'm out walking my dogs, or laying by the pool, or just cooking dinner for my family. Those are the only times that I really have those really creative moments. And I've done a little bit of research too into the neuroscience behind creativity. And there is very concrete evidence that being out of your analytical mode helps you be able to be a better problem solver, because it marries the right brain with the left. And then you're able to see solutions that you didn't see before. But we put so much pressure on ourselves to always be, productive, that sometimes being productive is the least productive thing, right?
Right. Yeah, because you just, like, I have so many squirrel moments if I don't allow myself to take a step back especially from the computer, because everything I'm doing is online.
And there's like here to distract you, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's amazing. Now, part of it is I'm getting older, so I have to take that in consideration. But a lot of it is the smallest thing will distract me. And if I don't have a Post-it note sitting in front of me that says what I was working on, I could spend 30 minutes doing something else that's not that, and then realize that's not what you started out doing. And so that can get frustrating, and that turns your productivity upside down. And so having a way to escape. Another way I escape too is if I know I have a project, if I'm building something or I'm repairing something, and like right now it's hot and my warehouse has no AC, and I've been repairing an old couch. I had to repair the belly of the couch, and I had no clue how to do that. Found some YouTube videos, saw how they were doing it, and then just studied it and just spent time just by myself trying to figure out how I'm going to fix this couch. And that is so rewarding for me, because it allows me, to be away. I'm not on social media. And then I realized, this would have been a great blog post. So I'm like, okay, now is there one more strand that I can go back and fix so that I can make this a blog post? Because my brain's always thinking, how can you get more traffic? So it's kind of a double-edged sword when you're out doing those things. When you get creative, you're like, now I need my computer. But
right. But then it helps you see the value of doing those things.
Yes.
Kind of works with that. I wanted to back up to what you said about having those moments where you step away and then you're able to think on a higher level and say put your editorial calendar together. I've become a huge fan of batching everything I can batch. So I do this in my business, but then I also do it in my personal life, and that's actually one of my courses. Is I teach entrepreneurs how to batch meals, like they would batch their social media or batch their content calendar, because I believe that anything that you can do in one sitting while you're focused and not moving from task to task to task, you're going to do much more quickly and effectively. And I think there's so much mental relief when you don't have to do the same treadmill thing every single day. So talk to me about how you batch your content and put together your editorial calendar, and not only what it does for your business, but what it does for your brain.
So the most batching I do is the social media scheduling. Because I am a procrastinator, I have just a piece of white paper that sits on the back of my closet door. And when I feel like it's time to do some brain dumping and some creative strategy, I have categories up there, and I just stick Post-it notes up against the categories. And so I can spend 30 minutes to an hour brain dumping, and my editorial calendar is there, because I feel like I don't like sticking a round peg in a square hole. I don't like being confined. And so I like to have a little bit of flexibility and freedom of saying, okay, I don't want to write that blog post, but I can go to the back of that door and select something that I've already told myself would be a really great blog post or podcast episode. And I already did the work. So I think it's important to be able to set yourself up in a successful situation if you're like me and you don't like to be confined. When I first started blogging, I was a 5-day-a-week blogger. My Mondays were a specific kind of post. My Tuesdays were always about books. My Wednesdays were always about beauty. My Thursdays were open for sponsored content. And my Fridays were food. That was how regimented I was. But then I got so overwhelmed by having to come up with something that specific every single day of the 5 days. And I was like, forget this. Like, this isn't really working for me. So I readopted a strategy. My business coach helped me. She was like, just go get some craft paper from the store and roll it down your door and just put Post-it notes up there. And that way, once you've written it, you take it down, you throw it away. And then when you're getting low on ideas, you spend 30 minutes to an hour creating more ideas, more Post-it notes, stick them up there on that wall, and you have a constant wealth of things to write about. So that is what I do. And that's where my batching comes in.
That's awesome. Yeah, because when you just sit down and you have to recreate something every single day, you're not always in creative mode. You can't always be. So I love that you dedicate the time to do that. But I think that's a good point that you make too. I definitely am totally guilty of overthinking things and becoming way too regimented. So that's something I've had to learn. And I think some of that comes with the early, like, testing out your different business models. And especially when you're still working full time, you kind of get to that point where, like, okay, I do need to be a little bit flexible with this if I'm going to keep doing this month after month and year after year, as the case may be. So,
yes,
definitely can appreciate that. Well, what else are you working on right now that might be helpful for wealthy bosses who struggle with social media, who either don't know where to get started or don't know how to get organized with it? How can you come in and help them as creative entrepreneurs who need all those thoughts corralled and kind of pushed in the right direction?
Well, I have 104 episodes of my podcast that you can listen to. That's a really great place to start. I actually have, if you visit bossworldcreative.com, up in the header area, there's a Start Here button, and it takes you to the actual episode where I show you the episodes that you need to listen to get started. So with my podcast, because 105 episodes is kind of overwhelming. If you're like, wow, I don't know where to start. Do I start at number 1 or do I start at 105? And so I've given you a podcast episode dedicated to newbies, either newbies of my show or newbies of social media or, anybody looking to learn. So my podcast is about me teaching you the what's, whys, and hows of blogging and business and being a creative entrepreneur. And even if you're not a blogger, because I have a lot of listeners that are not just bloggers, like they're entrepreneurs that have a blog, my content is still relevant to you because I'm going to teach you how to show up in social media, which is important, and how to use the different platforms and who your blue person is, which is who your client avatar is or your ideal customer. I call them blue people because when I heard the word avatar for the first time, I immediately thought of the movie of the blue people. So that's where blue people come from. So if you ever hear in a podcast episode me say, it's important to find who your blue person is. Can you see that?
I'm trying. I think the title is covering it. Our little intro.
Oh, okay. It says hashtag my blue person. If you don't know who that person is, come listen to the show because I help walk you through on how you even go about figuring out. Like if you didn't know you needed a blue person, now you do know that you have to have a blue person in order to effectively write content to bring that person to you, that person will buy from you and sign up for your list and always be there to take anything that you're willing to give them. And so that is what my podcast is all about, is me teaching as much as I can. Like everything that comes out of my brain or anything new that I learn, I'm going to teach it. Because when I first started, there wasn't anybody doing that. And that's where my hashtag blogging education series came from, because nobody was teaching the nitty gritty behind the scenes. Like nobody knew what sitemaps were. Nobody knew that Twitter had Twitter lists back in the day. And when I started, Pinterest didn't exist. So that tells you how long I've been around. So that is what my podcast is about. And I do have a series coming up for those that are bloggers and understand a little bit about blogging that will be coming out at the end of July. It's going to be called the Nitty Gritty Bloggers Series, and I'm interviewing successful bloggers who are making full-time income. They may not be just bloggers. They may still be hustling a day job as well or a weekend job, but are successfully making enough money where they don't have to do that, so that they can share their journey and they can share what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for them and how they make money and where it came from, because nobody's talking about that. And I want other people to realize that having an online business, there are ways that you can make money that maybe you didn't realize you could make money from them. So that series is coming. I'm so excited. I've got some powerhouse bloggers coming on this show to share their stories. And when I pitch this to these bloggers, I say, listen, I'm looking for you to be real and raw. If this isn't your cup of tea, you won't hurt my feelings if you say no. I want people that are willing to share, because we can't learn from others unless they're willing to share it all. Like, I get so tired of hearing some of these bosses selling their webinars, and it's just a fluffy bit of knowledge. They're not actually like telling you how they did it. That gets frustrating, because we can't all replicate what they did without knowing, here's what they did at A, here's what they did at B, and here's what they did at C, and B didn't work, so they went to D. People aren't really sharing that, and that's what I'm hoping to bring to the table with this new series.
And I think sharing the struggles, like the fact that you're asking them to share their struggles, to me, that's almost just as important, if not more important, to hear about the struggles that entrepreneurs face, because we always hear about those success stories. I mean, we usually hear about them in their webinar landing pages that they're telling us about. But I think it's important for us as entrepreneurs to talk about the hard stuff and be able to keep each other going. I mean, that's a huge part of my mission. I just happen to do it more through personal health, but it all ties in to being able to sustain this pace that it takes to really pursue that creative dream. It takes organization, it takes self-care, it takes nitty-gritty and people taking you by the hand and talking about the good and the bad, and then just being on that journey with you. So I'm excited that you are part of that journey with me, and vice versa. I'm going to share, I think we're just learning, this is the first time we've used this platform. I think I can post in the comments below.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Right? That's the right one, right?
Yeah.
Good. Perfect. So bossgirlcreative.com. Check out her podcast. And speaking of podcasts, if you are already on my VIP list, you know that tonight is also special, not only because I am inviting my very first live guest, but that beginning next week, we are going to be launching The Wealthy Boss Show as a podcast, in addition to the current Facebook Live blog post and YouTube video that it's currently being converted into. So don't hesitate if you want to go back and hear all these good things again, maybe refresh yourself on all the tips that Taylor was talking about on your car, in your drive. Don't forget to stay tuned for the upcoming podcast version of the Wealthy Boss Show. Taylor, thank you so much. I'm so honored to have had you here on the show and to be part of this entrepreneurial journey with you.
Thank you, Mariah. Appreciate it.
Take care.